Parents pressured me to forgive my brother for his affair with my ex-wife and her pregnancy, then demanded I support them financially. My wife, Amy, 26F, cheated on me with my brother, Jake, 26M, which is why I, 34M, recently got divorced. My family did choose them over me, and yes, that did happen, but karma had other ideas. To help you see how my entire life culminated in this awful betrayal, let me begin from the beginning. Jake, who was born when I was 8 years old, was always the golden child while I was growing up in suburban Boston. In the eyes of our parents, Robert, 58 Mem, and Sarah, 56 F, I seemed to vanish. Although they weren't particularly nasty, I was undoubtedly treated as an afterthought. This reality was pounded home to us during our entire upbringing. I can still clearly recall winning my first science fair in 6th grade. I devoted months to creating a functional model of solar system dynamics, replete with orbital calculations and revolving planets. I received first prize and a special commendation for mathematical precision from the judges. Jake had a T-ball practice, not even a game, just practice, so my parents didn't attend the ceremony at all. The walls of our living room were covered with Jake's participation ribbons, while my award remained unopened on the mantel for a week before vanishing into the basement. Our entire childhood was shaped by that. Jake's C+ grades were celebrated, but my straight A's were met with distracted nods. My mother first expressed concern that Jake could feel bad about his regular classes as a result of my enrollment in the Advanced Placement program. Jake received a new automobile for his 16th birthday to help build his confidence, according to Dad, whereas I had to start working part-time at 16 in order to earn money for college and buy my own clothes. Graduating from high school was very difficult. Instead of watching me receive my diploma and give my valedictorian address, my parents spent most of the ceremony photographing Jake playing in the stands when he was just 10 years old. Jake was whining about being bored, so they didn't hear me announce my MIT scholarship. A celebration dinner for Jake's early baseball season was transformed into a party because Jake seems a little down about all your achievements. Mom even encouraged me to tone down my presentation of my college intentions. I scarcely noticed that I had been accepted to MIT on a partial scholarship because Jake had recently made the junior baseball team. "That's nice, honey, but did you hear Jake might make starting pitcher next season?" Mom said, I recall. I came to the realization that nothing I ever did would be sufficient. At that point, I served as the practice child, the test subject, for Jake, their actual parenting endeavor. With my scholarship, the money I saved from 3 part-time jobs, and the resolve to never look back, I set out for MIT at the age of 18. Jake had a summer league game the day I moved into my dorm, so my parents left early. They didn't even assist me with unpacking. Those were life-changing college years. I was evaluated entirely on my own merits for the first time. Upon discovering my aptitude for software architecture, I immersed myself in computer science and finished with honors. Several IT organizations were interested in my distributed systems optimization undergraduate thesis, and by the time I graduated, I had received 5 job offers. A part of me still hoped that things might improve, so I picked a promising company in Boston, in part because it was near home. I was in charge of my own development team within 2 years, and by the 5th year, I was the youngest senior developer in the company's history. My folks were too busy assisting Jake with his 3rd college major change to really understand what I did for a job. 4 years ago, at a tiny coffee shop close to my workplace, the real turning point in my life occurred. Amy and I met there. While completing her teaching degree, she was working as a barista. She somehow managed to recall each regular's order as well as a personal characteristic. She acknowledged that she had been writing encouraging notes on my coffee cups for weeks before she eventually consented to go out with me. I hadn't even noticed. I had been so focused on my tasks. 6 hours were spent on our first date. We discussed everything, including our families, anxieties, and dreams. She seemed to genuinely get my family's problems. When I informed her about my early years, she responded, "They're blind. They have no idea what they were missing." I felt like I was being seen for the first time. The following year seemed unreal. We prepared extravagant meals together, spent weekends discovering Boston's hidden bookstores, and went trekking in New Hampshire. She pushed me to go for a big promotion at work, helped me get ready for the interviews, and celebrated my success more than anybody else. She shed joyful tears when I asked her to marry me after 14 months, saying she had been hoping I would. At the time, I believed our wedding was tiny and ideal. When my family arrived, they talked about Jake's new job opportunity in California for the whole of the reception. In order to show everyone a text message from Jake regarding his second interview, Mom actually cut short Amy's father's toast. In hindsight, I should have recognized it as a warning flag, but Amy dismissed it with a laugh, stating that she thought their commitment to Jake was sweet. Our marriage was everything I could have imagined. For 3 years, we began discussing starting a family, acquired a lovely condo in Cambridge, and took trips when we could. Amy made our house feel like the cozy, caring home I never had as a child by decorating it with pictures of our travels and planting a little container garden on our balcony. We were a team. She constantly asserted, "Us against the world." Then Jake got in touch last year. After failing to succeed in California due to the startup culture not being his vibe, he returned to Boston. He wrote me a lengthy email in which he expressed his longing for his older brother and his desire to mend our relationship after growing up. He wrote, "Family should stick together." After a week of contemplation, Amy urged me to give him a chance. "People evolve," she stated. "Perhaps they've come to terms with their losses." I decided to go out to supper with Jake, against my better judgment. Although awkward, the first meeting showed promise. Jake seemed to have grown up and become more self-aware. He stated he wanted to make atonement and acknowledged that he had had it easy as a child. A week later, I introduced him to Amy, and they clicked right away. Too well, as I would learn later. Everything appeared to be ideal at first. A couple of times a week, Jake would stop by for dinner. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, brought wine, and entertained us with tales of his exploits in California. He even stood up for me when our parents began showing their customary partiality at Sunday dinners. In fact, I began to think that we might actually be biological brothers. Subtly, however, things began to change. Jake started unexpectedly visiting our home, sometimes while I was still at work. While she graded papers, Amy stated they were simply hanging out and that it was good to have company. He would remain for supper and use my coffee mug while chatting with my wife and making inside jokes. I chose to overlook the warning signs, which included their sudden silence when I walked into a room. Amy's phone abruptly turning to the side when I sat next to her. Their knowing glances at dinner, and their coincidental meetings at the coffee shop or grocery store. The announcement of the pregnancy followed. We were eating dinner at home. Naturally, Jake was present when Amy broke the news. Although I was ecstatic, Jake's response ought to have told me everything. He was not in the least bit surprised. Rather, he smiled with a knowing satisfaction that made my stomach flip. Jake was there all the time after that. He would talk about how active he would be in our child's life, touch Amy's stomach without asking, and make remarks about the baby's future. Despite my efforts to organize a romantic baby moon trip, Hubby had inadvertently invited himself. He said, "The baby needs both of us," and Amy concurred. I still remember the night I found out. I had been lying awake, mentally reliving months of dubious events. Amy's phone was on the nightstand, charging while she slept peacefully next to me. I had never once looked at her phone in our 6 years together. I was a believer in trust and privacy. But I had a need to know something. They had hundreds of communications dating back 6 months. While I was at work, they had secret meetings in hotels, plans for their future together, conversations about the infant. Their infant. Soon after he returned to my life, they had begun sharing a bed. They had intended to tell me after the baby was born, assuming that I would be too attached to the child to leave. Therefore, the pregnancy wasn't an accident. I felt my world come crashing down, message by message, as I read every single one till dawn. I was seated in our reading chair with Amy's phone in my hand. When she woke up, she was immediately aware of what I had found. She sobbed, "We didn't intend for this to occur. Jake and I simply clicked. He knows me better than you ever could." In fact, she spoke the most overused phrase in the history of affairs. "We were going to tell you, but we didn't want to worry you after I became pregnant." I called my parents that morning in the hopes that they would finally support me. I was astounded by their answer. Mom said, "Jake made a mistake. But he's going to be a father now. You must forgive him and act like the bigger person. Consider the infant. Consider the grandchild." That was produced when their younger son was having an affair with the wife of their older son. They were also protecting him once more. There are some things that never change. That day, I called a divorce attorney and checked into a hotel. Amy took turns pleading for my pardon and condemning me for deserting our family. At work, Jake attempted to corner me by claiming that we needed to have a man-to-man conversation. I reported him for workplace harassment and had security escort him out. Going through a divorce was a nightmare. Amy and Jake claimed their affair started because of my emotional unavailability, portraying me as domineering and emotionally abusive. According to my parents' testimony, I had always been difficult and had lifelong jealousy of Jake. Mom even blamed the mediator for the entire problem, saying that I should have been more considerate of Jake's demands. After that, I stopped negotiating. After we went to court, Amy managed to get a respectable settlement. It seems that in Massachusetts, having an affair with your husband's brother does not waive alimony. Small successes, though, like preserving the condo and the majority of my pay. I am currently 34 years old, divorced, and totally estranged from my family. I've changed my email, blacklisted their numbers, and told building security to never let them in. On certain days, I find myself questioning whether there was any way I could have avoided this, if I'd been a better spouse, brother, or son. However, I later realized that I wasn't the one who deceived everyone. Turning family against family was not something I did. It's said that everyone eventually experiences karma. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but I do know that I'm sick of being the family's scapegoat. Having to be understanding when everyone else gets away with ruining lives is something I'm tired of. I've lived my entire life as the one who was passed over, the second best option, and the afterthought. No more. However, just when I believed that things couldn't get much worse, they were about to get even more bizarre. Update 1. I assumed my family would finally leave me alone when I stopped communicating with them after the divorce. About a month has passed since everything happened, and I've been making an effort to concentrate on getting better and moving on. However, it seems they had different ideas. When our office receptionist messaged me yesterday morning, while I was in the middle of an important meeting with my development team. She said that my mother, Sarah, was in the lobby and insisted on seeing me. She reportedly spent more than an hour there, telling everyone she just needed to talk to her son. Since my team had seen Jake's prior incident at work, they could tell how uneasy I was. After ignoring her and carrying on with my job, my phone began to ring with calls from unidentified numbers. It seems that my mother had enlisted a number of family members to attempt to contact me. I thought it might be work-related when I finally answered one call, but it was my Aunt Linda, 54F, with whom I hadn't spoken in years. Not even bothering to say hello, she began, "Your brother and Amy are really struggling. Jake still hasn't found a job, and the settlement money is running low. Well, no one wants to hire him after that." Jake's reputation appears to have been ruined by his affair with Amy, which somehow made its way into his professional network. After doing background checks, a number of prospective employers withdrew their offers. I couldn't help but notice the irony. For once, his actions had tangible repercussions. This is where it becomes ridiculous, though. In addition to purchasing groceries and paying their rent, my parents have also been paying for Amy's prenatal medical expenses. My father's retirement funds are being depleted, and they are now in a panic as they run out of money themselves. Their remedy? They want me to provide financial assistance for the woman who deceived me and the brother who ruined my marriage. My mother didn't just show up at my office. She had a plan. She chose to ambush me at work, since she knew I wouldn't return their calls. After threatening to stay until closing time, she launched into a prepared speech on forgiveness and family responsibilities. When I eventually made my way down to the lobby to handle the problem, she easily forgot that I had to pay for my own college education when she remarked, "Your father and I have always provided for both our sons. It's time for you to take charge and support your brother during this difficult time." What I was hearing was unbelievable. A rough patch? My wife became pregnant after he had an affair with her, and he attempted to claim the child as his own. That is a purposeful set of decisions, not a tough stretch. She foolishly responded, "Well, if you had paid more attention to Amy's needs before—" I found security. I interrupted her and urged her to go. I loudly announced in the lobby that I was leaving my own brother and his unborn child behind before she left. Despite their support, a number of my co-workers found this to be humiliating. Jake sent me an email later that evening. In order to get around my blocks, he had made a new account. Half-hearted apologies and barely disguised requests for financial assistance were mixed together in the email. He wrote about the difficulties Amy was having with her pregnancy, something I was unaware of, how they were unable to pay for appropriate medical treatment, and how the stress was impacting my future nephew or niece. The attachment, a sonogram image, was what truly drew my attention. Even though the manipulation techniques were clear, they were attacking me emotionally with their unborn child, the result of their affair, in an attempt to take a new tack. My father arrived at my apartment complex the following day and pretended to be there, only to talk. I declined to let him in when the front desk called. Then, for 2 hours, he stood in the lobby telling everyone who would listen how his successful son was causing his brother's family to suffer. Since then, I've had to inform the management of my building of the circumstances and ask them to bar any of my family members from entering. I don't see any other choice, even though it's awkward to publicly discuss my private issues in this way. Additionally, the harassment has spread to social media. On Facebook, Amy has been making vague accusations against me, claiming that she was abandoned throughout her pregnancy by her emotionally unavailable husband, adding his own remarks about how some people need to step up and take responsibility. Jake has been reposting these posts. He seems to be unaware of the irony of discussing responsibility while pleading for freebies. I find it infuriating how they have twisted this story. They portray me as the bad guy, since I didn't provide for the folks who deceived me. They seem to believe that I have a duty to save them from their own mess, simply because I'm succeeding professionally. I've started keeping a record of everything, including emails, problems at work, and posts on social media. According to my lawyer, if they try anything legal, we could need it. She is especially worried that they would attempt to use the legal system to obtain more support. The worst thing? I've received messages from certain family friends and distant relatives encouraging me to put family first and be the bigger person. They don't seem to realize that Jake and Amy ruined my last remnant of a family. Even though I'm steadfast in my resolve to not assist them, the persistent harassment is wearing me down. To cope with all of this, I've been seeing a therapist, and I'm thinking of searching for a new job in a different place. Although I don't like the idea of fleeing, I'm at a loss on what to do to find serenity. My own family has descended to a level I never imagined. But here we are. They are not merely pleading for assistance. They are attempting to intimidate and coerce me into giving money to the same individuals who ruined my life. I get a feeling that this isn't over yet. Desperate people do desperate things, and they're growing desperate. Update 2. Suddenly, my former partner's attorney sent me a notice. Jake and Amy were trying to sue me for further support, citing increased medical needs and changed circumstances. My lawyer, who had been recording all of their harassment incidents, was enraged but ready. Last week was the scheduled court date. It was unreal to enter that courtroom. Amy was dressed to highlight her obvious pregnancy. Our parents sat directly behind them, looking smugly arrogant, while Jake sat behind her in our father's old suit. First up was their lawyer, who told a story that almost made me chuckle. They claimed that because they had undervalued the emotional toll of the divorce, the initial payment was insufficient. They said that my pattern of workplace harassment had prevented Jake from finding a job, and even implied that the stress caused by my vindictive behavior was putting Amy's pregnancy in jeopardy because it allegedly required specialized care due to high-risk issues. The way my lawyer responded was heartbreaking. She started by playing surveillance tape from my office building, which included my mother's theatrical displays, Jake's violent conduct, and Amy's attempts to enter through the rear door. She then presented social media evidence, including a detailed chronology of their campaign of online abuse. Their financial records were the true surprise. Jake had rejected multiple jobs as being beneath him, not because he was having trouble finding employment as a result of my pestering. For the court's pity, Amy had turned down a full-time teaching job in order to keep her jobless pregnant woman status. Amy's prenatal records, which revealed a perfectly healthy pregnancy with typical expenses, were the most incriminating of all. They had been playing pawn with their unborn child. The judge was clearly upset. The judge interrupted their attorney when he attempted to explain that emotional discomfort warranted more help. Your clients seem to have committed perjury, counselor. Do you want to keep going in this direction? Their lawyer returned with a somber expression. After a short break, Jake was pale, Amy was crying, and their united front had fallen apart. I was pleasantly surprised by the judge's decision. In addition to rejecting their motion, he also lowered my alimony payments by 60%. Parties who misuse the legal system are not viewed favorably by this court, he said. Mr. Smith seems to be the victim of a well-planned scheme to exploit him financially and emotionally. The fallout happened quickly. Amy decided she could work after Jake unexpectedly landed a job in retail. In their final message, My parents accused me of destroying Jake's last chance and assured me that they would never forgive me for abandoning my family, citing irreconcilable differences regarding truthfulness. Their attorney resigned from their representation. My organization increased security and barred them from the property. I learned that my parents had taken out a second mortgage to pay for legal bills, and that Jake and Amy were arguing over money all the time via common acquaintances. Finally, I feel like I can breathe. I can rebuild my savings thanks to the lower expenses, and I'm thinking about accepting a job offer in Seattle. Letting someone suffer the repercussions of their actions is sometimes the finest form of retaliation. However, I have a feeling that this story is far from over. Update 3. I want to start by thanking this community. I have remained strong during this entire fiasco, thanks to your support and remarks. Here is what may be my story's last update. Aunt Linda, the sister of my father, unexpectedly contacted me a few weeks after the court triumph. I was interested enough to listen to her because she has never been involved in family conflict. A huge error, trying to seem worried, she began, "Your father isn't getting any younger. His health is suffering as a result of all this stress." She continued by talking about how my parents would lose their retirement funds, how they had to refinance their home to pay for Jake and Amy's expenditures, and how family should stick together no matter what. She changed strategy when I didn't react with pity right away. "Did you realize that every night your mother sobs herself to sleep? Even though they may have acted inappropriately against you as a child, they are still your parents. Jake remains your brother despite everything that has transpired." At last, I cut her off. "What took place? Are you referring to the months he spent having sex with my wife, getting her pregnant, and then attempting to claim the child as his own? That's what took place." I was astounded by her response. "Well, perhaps you could have been more involved in your marriage." In fact, she attempted to place the blame for their affair on me, claiming that my jealousy of Jake as a child had produced a toxic environment that pushed them together. It was so ridiculous, I laughed. Really laughed. Another member of the family was attempting to deceive me into taking accountability for Jake and Amy's behavior. What's different this time? It didn't move me at all, Linda. I asked, "Why don't you assist them if you're so worried about their financial status? Your husband's legal practice is doing well and you possess 3 rental properties. Why am I the only one who is supposed to stand by them?" That was different. She sputtered, adding that I had a special obligation as Jake's brother. She said she didn't want to take sides when I asked her why she hadn't stepped in during all of this. "But now you're picking sides," I said. "You decided to come to me and demand that I pay for their consequences, rather than admit the harm they caused." She then revealed what she believed to be her secret weapon. "Your father is thinking of retiring early because of stress. The house may need to be sold. Is seeing your folks lose everything because you're too proud to assist what you want?" I said, "No, Linda. They're losing everything as a result of their decision to condone Jake's actions once more. They, like Jake and Amy, are paying the price for their own decisions. And what do you know? I'm not responsible for fixing that. When I'm older and alone, family is all we have in the end," she emphasized, threatening that I will regret this. "No," I replied. "Self-respect is all we have in the end, and I'm finally choosing to keep mine." In addition to blocking her number, I hung up her call. However, it had the unanticipated benefit of providing me with clarity. I felt truly free for the first time from the obligation and guilt that had plagued me since I was a young child. I accepted the Seattle job offer later that day. The change of location feels appropriate, and the firm is providing a substantial promotion. I'm starting over and selling the condo. Yesterday, my coworkers threw me a farewell party. I learned what true support looks like from these individuals who supported me during the darkest months of my life, with the straightforward statement, "Your worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see it." My closest colleague gave me a card that was signed by everyone. I've discovered that family is about mutual support, respect, and trust, rather than blood. The friends who supported me, the co-workers who shielded me, and ultimately myself proved to be my true family. I'm done. To my parents, Jake, Amy, and now Linda, your decisions brought you to this point, and you are responsible for the results. I'm not available to be your ATM or your scapegoat anymore. For my part, I'm excited for my new life in Seattle. I'm thrilled about the initiatives that await me at my company's renowned West Coast location. More significantly, I can't wait to create a life in which I'm respected for who I am rather than compared to someone else's golden child. Writing my last post from an empty condo surrounded by stacked boxes seems oddly appropriate. I start driving west tomorrow. I'll be looking back on my past life with all of its suffering and family strife. Yes, their baby was born last week, in case you were wondering. No, I haven't contacted anyone or seen any pictures. I've closed that chapter of my life. Again, I want to thank Reddit for supporting me over this trip. When I was having self-doubt, your encouragement and counsel kept me going. Anyone going through a similar situation should know that their value transcends their family's treatment of them. Walking away is sometimes the most self-loving thing you can do. It's time to go. Cheers to fresh starts.